in the annals of modern mystery. Few stories have endured with such haunting persistence as the tale of the Philadelphia experiment, a story born in the shadows of war, whispered through classified corridors, and echoed across decades of speculation. It is a legend that defies easy explanation, a tale of invisibility, teleportation, and the terrifying consequences of tamper with the fabric of reality. This is not merely a story about a ship. It is a story about the limits of science, the reach of government secrecy, and the human hunger to understand what lies just beyond the veil of the known. Our journey begins in the early 1940s, a time when the world was engulfed in the flames of World War II. The United States, newly drawn into the conflict, was racing to develop technologies that could turn the tide of war. Radar, sonar, nuclear power, all were being explored with unprecedented urgency. But according to legend, one experiment went far beyond conventional warfare. It sought to make a ship disappear. The USS Eldridge, a destroyer escort commissioned in 1943, was said to be the subject of a radical test conducted at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. The goal, to render the ship invisible to enemy detection. But the results, if the stories are to be believed, were far more dramatic and far more disturbing. The earliest accounts of the Philadelphia experiment emerged not from official records, but from a series of letters written by a man named Carl Allen, also known as Carlos Allende. In the mid-1950s, Allen sent these letters to Morris K. Jessup, an author known for his work on unidentified flying objects in fringe science. What Allen described was nothing short of astonishing. He claimed that in October 1943, the USS Eldridge was subjected to a powerful electromagnetic field that caused it to vanish from sight and from physical space. According to Allen, the ship reappeared hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, before returning to Philadelphia. The experiment, he said, had catastrophic effects on the crew. Some were driven insane. Others were fused into the metal of the ship. A few simply vanished. Jessup, intrigued and disturbed, began to investigate. He corresponded with Allen, trying to verify the claims. But the deeper he dug, the stranger the story became. Allen's letters were filled with technical jargon, cryptic references, and wild assertions. He spoke of Einstein's unified field theory of time travel and of forces beyond human comprehension. The Navy, surprisingly, took an interest. Jessup's book, The Case of the UFO, was annotated with strange notes, allegedly written by Allen and two other unknown individuals. This annotated version, known as the Vero edition, was circulated within the Office of Naval Research. It suggested that the Navy had indeed conducted experiments involving electromagnetic fields and space-time manipulation. But was any of it true? The USS Eldridge was a real ship. It was commissioned in August 1943 and served in the Atlantic during the war. Its movements were documented, and official records show no indication of any unusual experiments. Yet the legend persisted, fueled by secrecy, speculation, and the tantalizing possibility that something extraordinary had occurred. To understand the Philadelphia experiment, we must first understand the scientific ideas that inspired it and the cultural climate that allowed such a story to flourish. During the early 20th century, physicists were grappling with the nature of reality itself. Albert Einstein's theories of relativity had revolutionized our understanding of space and time. The idea that time could bend, that space could warp, and that gravity was a manifestation of geometry. These concepts were new, radical, and deeply unsettling. Einstein himself had pursued a unified field theory, an attempt to reconcile gravity and electromagnetism into a single framework. He never succeeded, but the idea lingered. In the minds of fringe theorists and imaginative thinkers, unified field theory became a kind of holy grail, a key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. Carl Allen claimed that the Navy had discovered a practical application of this theory. By generating a powerful electromagnetic field around the USS Eldridge, they had disrupted the fabric of space-time. The ship, he said, had entered another dimension, or perhaps another point in time. The implications were staggering. If true, it meant that teleportation, invisibility, and time travel were not just science fiction. They were achievable, but the cost, according to Allen, was horrific. Human beings were not meant to endure such forces. The crew of the Eldridge, he claimed, suffered unimaginable consequences. Some accounts describe sailors who became unstuck in time, vanishing and reappearing at random. Others were said to have gone mad, unable to cope with the disorientation. The most chilling stories involve men who were fused into the bulkheads of the ship, their bodies partially embedded in metal, screaming in agony. These tales are gruesome, surreal, and almost certainly exaggerated, but they reflect a deeper fear, the fear that science, when pushed too far, can become monstrous. The core of the Philadelphia experiment legend centers on a supposed test conducted in late October 1943. According to Carl Allen's account, the USS Eldridge was fitted with powerful electromagnetic generators. When activated, these devices created a shimmering green haze around the ship. Then, in an instant, the vessel vanished, not just from sight but from physical space. Witnesses claimed the ship reappeared in Norfolk, Virginia, before returning to Philadelphia. The entire event, they said, lasted only minutes, but the consequences were devastating. Sailors were said to be disoriented, some driven mad, others physically embedded in the ship's structure. The experiment, according to Allen, was a catastrophic failure, a glimpse into forces humanity was not ready to control. But how plausible are these claims? To answer that, we must turn to science. The idea of rendering an object invisible has fascinated scientists and storytellers for centuries. In modern physics, invisibility is theoretically possible through the manipulation of light, bending it around an object using metamaterials. These materials can guide electromagnetic waves in such a way that they avoid the object entirely, making it appear as if nothing is there. However, this technology is extremely limited. It works only at specific wavelengths, and only for very small objects. The notion of cloaking an entire naval vessel, especially in 1943, is far beyond the capabilities of any known material science, then or now. Teleportation, too, has a basis in theoretical physics, but only at the quantum level. Quantum teleportation involves the transfer of quantum states between particles, using entanglement. It does not involve the movement of matter itself. The idea of teleporting a ship, or even a human, remains firmly in the realm of science fiction. Then there's the claim of time travel. Einstein's theories of relativity do allow for time dilation, the slowing of time due to high speeds or strong gravitational fields. But actual travel through time, especially backward, requires conditions that are not just extreme, but possibly impossible. Wormholes, closed time-like curves, and exotic matter are all theoretical constructs that have never been observed or created. Carl Allen's references to unified field theory suggest a misunderstanding of Einstein's work. Unified field theory was an attempt to merge gravity and electromagnetism into a single framework. Einstein pursued it for decades but never succeeded. No version of the theory, even in its most speculative forms, predicts invisibility, teleportation, or time travel. So what could have inspired such a story? One possibility is the Navy's use of degaussing, a real technique used to reduce a ship's magnetic signature. Degaussing involves running electrical currents through coils installed in the hull, which neutralize the ship's magnetic field. This makes it less susceptible to magnetic mines. To an untrained observer, the activation of degaussing equipment might appear dramatic. The ship could shimmer, vibrate, or emit strange sounds. If combined with fog or atmospheric conditions, it might even seem to vanish briefly. But this is a far cry from true invisibility. Another possibility is miscommunication or deliberate fabrication. Carl Allen was known to be eccentric, and his letters to Jessup were filled with contradictions. He often changed details, exaggerated claims, and referenced technologies that didn't exist. Some researchers believe he was mentally unstable or simply seeking attention. The Navy, for its part, has consistently denied any such experiment took place. Official records show the USS Eldridge was not in Philadelphia at the time of the alleged test. Its movements were well documented, and no anomalies were reported. Crew members interviewed decades later confirmed that no unusual events occurred. Yet the story persists. Why? Because it taps into something deeper, a fear of unchecked science, a suspicion of government secrecy, and a fascination with the unknown. The Philadelphia experiment is not just a tale of a disappearing ship. It is a metaphor for the dangers of pushing the boundaries of knowledge without understanding the consequences. It also reflects the cultural climate of the 1950s and 60s, when Cold War paranoia was at its peak. Stories of secret experiments, mind control, and alien technology were rampant. The idea that the military might be conducting tests beyond public scrutiny was not just plausible, it was expected. In this context, the Philadelphia experiment became part of a larger narrative, one that included Roswell, Area 51, and MKUltra. These stories, whether true or not, spoke to a collective unease. They suggested that the world was stranger than it appeared, and that powerful forces were at work behind the scenes. But science demands evidence. And in the case of the Philadelphia experiment, the evidence is lacking. No credible documentation, no verified eyewitnesses, no physical traces. Just a series of letters, a few annotated books, and decades of speculation. Still, the legend endures, because legends are not bound by facts. They live in the space between truth and imagination, a space where anything is possible and where the boundaries of reality are constantly being tested. The Philadelphia experiment is more than a story. It's a cultural phenomenon. Over the decades, it has inspired books, films, documentaries, and endless speculation. Its themes, invisibility, teleportation, time travel, and government secrecy, resonate deeply with audiences who question the boundaries of science and the transparency of authority. In 1984, the legend was immortalized in the film The Philadelphia Experiment, a science fiction thriller that dramatized a story with time travel and a government cover-up. The movie introduced the tale to a new generation and solidified its place in pop culture. Sequels, novels, and even video games followed, each adding new layers to the myth. But the Philadelphia Experiment is not alone. It belongs to the broader category of military myths and conspiracy theories. Stories that blend real history with speculative fiction, often fueled by secrecy, fear, and the unknown. Let's compare it with a few of the most enduring legends. The Roswell incident in 1947. Just 4 years after the alleged Philadelphia experiment, another mystery emerged, this time in the deserts of New Mexico. In July 1947, a strange object crashed near Roswell. The U.S. military initially described it as a flying disc, but quickly retracted the statement, claiming it was a weather balloon. For decades, conspiracy theorists have argued that the object was an alien spacecraft and that the government recovered extraterrestrial bodies. The Roswell incident became the cornerstone of UFO lore, spawning countless investigations, documentaries, and fictional adaptations. Like the Philadelphia experiment, Roswell involves a military setting a sudden, unexplained event, a rapid change in the official narrative allegations of a cover-up. Both stories reflect a deep public suspicion of government transparency and a fascination with technologies beyond our understanding. Area 51. Located in the Nevada desert, Area 51 is a highly classified U.S. Air Force facility. For years, its existence was denied, and its purpose remained a mystery. Rumors swirled that it housed alien spacecraft, advanced weapons, and secret experiments. Area 51 became a symbol of secrecy, a place where the government could conduct experiments away from public scrutiny. It shares thematic DNA with the Philadelphia experiment. Both involve hidden technologies, unexplained phenomena, and the possibility of science fiction becoming reality. In both cases, the lack of information fuels speculation. The less the public knows, the more they imagine. The Montauk Project. Perhaps the closest relative to the Philadelphia experiment is the Montauk Project, an alleged series of experiments conducted at Camp Hero in Montauk, New York. According to conspiracy theorists, the U.S. government conducted time travel experiments, mind control tests, and interdimensional research at the site during the 1970s and 80s. The Montauk Project is often described as a continuation of the Philadelphia experiment. Some versions of the story claim that survivors of the Eldridge experiment were relocated to Montauk, where the research continued in secret. The Montauk myth gained traction through books like The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, and later inspired the hit Netflix series Stranger Things. Like the Philadelphia experiment, it blends real locations with fantastical claims, creating a compelling narrative that's difficult to disprove and easy to believe. MKUltra, unlike the previous examples, MKUltra was real. Conducted by the CIA from the 1950s to the 1970s, MKUltra was a series of experiments on mind control, often involving drugs like LSD. The goal was to develop techniques for interrogation and psychological manipulation. Many of the subjects were unaware they were being experimented on. When MKUltra was exposed in the 1970s, it confirmed what many had feared, that the government was capable of conducting unethical experiments in secret. This revelation gave credibility to other conspiracy theories, including the Philadelphia experiment. If MKUltra was real, people reasoned, why not time travel? Why not invisibility? HAARP, the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, HAARP, is a scientific facility in Alaska that studies the ionosphere. But to conspiracy theorists, HAARP is a weapon capable of controlling weather, triggering earthquakes, and manipulating minds. Like the Philadelphia experiment, HAARP involves advanced electromagnetic technology. And like the Eldridge legend, it's accused of tampering with forces beyond human control. The scientific community has repeatedly debunked these claims, but the myth persists, fueled by fear, misunderstanding, and distrust. Why these myths persist? Military myths endure because they tap into universal anxieties. Fear of the unknown, distrust of authority, fascination with forbidden science. They often begin with a kernel of truth, a real location, a real experiment, a real moment of secrecy, and grow into legends through speculation and storytelling. The Philadelphia experiment, like Roswell Montauk, thrives in the absence of evidence. It invites us to imagine what might be possible and what might be hidden, but it also serves as a cautionary tale. It reminds us that science, when divorced from ethics and transparency, can become dangerous. And it challenges us to think critically, to separate fact from fiction, and to question not just what we're told, but why we're told it. The Philadelphia experiment, like many enduring legends, thrives not because of hard evidence, but because of its psychological appeal. It taps into deep-rooted human instincts, curiosity, fear, distrust, and a desire to believe in something greater than ourselves. To understand why stories like this persist, we must explore the psychology behind conspiracy theories and modern myths, the need for meaning in chaos. Human beings are pattern-seeking creatures. We are wired to find meaning in randomness, to connect dots even when no connection exists. This cognitive bias, known as apophenia, helps us make sense of the world, but it also makes us vulnerable to false narratives. During times of uncertainty, such as war or political unrest, people are more likely to believe in conspiracies. The Philadelphia experiment emerged during the Cold War era, when fear of government secrecy and technological overreach was at an all-time high. In such climates, stories that offer hidden explanations become especially attractive. They provide a sense of control, a way to explain the unexplainable. Distrust of authority. Another key factor is institutional distrust. When governments or organizations are perceived as secretive or deceptive, people begin to question everything. The U.S. military's history of classified projects, from nuclear testing to psychological experiments, has created fertile ground for suspicion. The Philadelphia experiment fits perfectly into this narrative. It suggests that the military was experimenting with forces beyond comprehension, and that the truth was buried to protect national interests. Whether or not the story is true, it resonates with those who feel excluded from the decision-making process. The allure of forbidden knowledge. There's also a romantic appeal to forbidden science. The idea that someone, somewhere, has unlocked secrets that defy the laws of nature. Time travel, teleportation, invisibility. These are not just scientific concepts. They are symbols of ultimate power. Believing in such possibilities allows people to imagine a world where limitations can be overcome. It's a form of escapism, but also a challenge to the status quo. If the Philadelphia experiment was real, then everything we know about physics, reality, and human potential must be reconsidered. Confirmation bias and echo chambers. Once someone believes in a conspiracy, they tend to seek out information that supports their view and ignore evidence that contradicts it. This is known as confirmation bias. In the age of the internet, this bias is amplified by echo chambers, online communities where like-minded individuals reinforce each other's beliefs. The Philadelphia experiment has found a home in these spaces. Forums, videos, and social media posts continue to circulate the story, often with new evidence or reinterpretations. The lack of official confirmation is seen not as a flaw, but as proof of a cover-up, the role of memory and storytelling. Psychologists also point to the unreliability of memory. Eyewitness accounts, especially those recalled years later, are often distorted by emotion, suggestion, and time. Carl Allen's letters, for example, were written years after the alleged event and contain numerous inconsistencies. But storytelling doesn't require precision. It requires impact. The most compelling myths are those that evoke strong emotions: fear, wonder, awe. The Philadelphia experiment does all of these. It's not just a story about a ship. It's a story about what happens when humans tamper with the unknown. Skepticism and scientific inquiry. Despite its popularity, the Philadelphia experiment has been thoroughly debunked by scientists and historians. The technologies described, electromagnetic invisibility, teleportation, time travel, are not supported by any credible evidence. The USS Eldridge's logs show no indication of unusual activity. The ship was not in Philadelphia at the time of the alleged experiment. Crew members have consistently denied any involvement in such tests. Moreover, the scientific principles cited by Allen, such as unified field theory, were misunderstood or misrepresented. Einstein's work, while revolutionary, never predicted the kind of phenomena described in the legend. Skeptics argue that the story is a fabrication, born from a mix of science fiction, paranoia, and personal delusion. But even skeptics acknowledge the power of myth, because myths, unlike facts, are not bound by evidence. They live in imagination, and in imagination, anything is possible. Legacy of the Philadelphia experiment. Today, the Philadelphia experiment remains one of the most enduring legends of the 20th century. It has inspired countless adaptations, from novels to films to video games. It continues to be discussed, debated, and reinterpreted. Its legacy is not in what it proves, but in what it suggests: that the world is full of mysteries and that the line between science and fiction is thinner than we think. Whether you believe the story or not, the Philadelphia experiment invites us to ask deeper questions. What are the limits of human knowledge? What happens when science outpaces ethics? And how do we separate truth from myth in a world full of secrets? To bring clarity to the mystery, we turn to experts in physics, psychology, and military history, each offering a unique perspective on the Philadelphia experiment and the culture conspiracy that surrounds it. Interview segment. Dr. Elaine Foster, theoretical physicist. Dr. Elaine Foster is a professor of theoretical physics at a leading research university. Her work focuses on quantum field theory and the limits of space-time manipulation. Dr. Foster, voiceover. There's no known physical mechanism that would allow a ship to teleport or become invisible using electromagnetic fields. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical. And even if you could bend light around an object, you'd still have to deal with heat, gravity, and structural integrity. It's science fiction, not science. Dr. Foster also addressed the misuse of Einstein's unified field theory in conspiracy circles. Dr. Foster, voiceover. Einstein's unified field theory was an attempt to mathematically unify gravity and electromagnetism. It was never completed, and it certainly didn't predict invisibility or time travel. These ideas are often misrepresented by people who don't understand the math or the physics. Dr. Marcus Bell, military historian. Dr. Marcus Bell is a military historian specializing in World War II naval operations. He has studied the USS Eldridge's service record extensively. The USS Eldridge was commissioned in August 1943 and served in the Atlantic. Its movements were well documented. There's no evidence it was ever in Philadelphia during the time of the alleged experiment. The Navy's degaussing procedures were routine and well understood, nothing remotely resembling teleportation or invisibility. Dr. Bell believes the myth may have originated from misunderstandings or deliberate fabrication. Carl Allen's letters are full of contradictions. He was not a credible witness. But the story took off because it fit into a larger narrative, one of secrecy, experimentation, and fear. Interview segment. Dr. Naomi Chun, psychologist. Dr. Naomi Chun is a psychologist who studies belief systems and the psychology of conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories often emerge during periods of social stress. They offer simple explanations for complex problems and give people a sense of control. The Philadelphia experiment is compelling because it combines science, secrecy, and horror, a perfect storm for myth-making. Dr. Chen also discussed the role of storytelling in shaping belief. Once a story is told with conviction, especially by someone claiming to be an insider, it becomes hard to dislodge. People don't just believe facts, they believe narratives. And the more dramatic the narrative, the more likely it is to stick. Final reflections. The Philadelphia experiment may never be proven or disproven. It exists in a space between history and myth, science and speculation. Whether it was a misunderstood naval test, a hoax, or something more, its impact is undeniable. It challenges us to think critically, to question what we're told, and to explore the boundaries of possibility. In the end, the story is less about what happened in 1943 and more about what we believe could happen if science were pushed to its limits. The experts we spoke to agree. The claims of invisibility and teleportation are not supported by physics, history, or psychology, but they also acknowledge the power of the myth and the importance of understanding why such stories endure. Because myths, even when false, reveal something true about us. They show our fears, our hopes, and our endless curiosity. Beyond the core legend of the Philadelphia experiment lies a web of fringe science theories, ideas that stretch the boundaries of conventional physics and venture into the speculative, the surreal, and the metaphysical. Some proponents of the story argue that the experiment was not just about invisibility or teleportation, but about accessing alternate dimensions. They suggest that the USS Eldridge was briefly shifted into a parallel reality, a space outside our known universe, governed by different laws of physics. This theory draws on concepts from quantum mechanics, string theory, and multiverse speculation. In quantum physics, particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, a phenomenon known as superposition. Some theorists extrapolate this to suggest that entire realities could coexist, and that with the right technology, one could move between them. But mainstream physicists caution against such leaps. Dr. Rajiv Malhotra, quantum physicist. Quantum mechanics is often misunderstood. While it's true that particles behave in strange ways at the quantum level, these effects don't scale up to macroscopic objects like ships or people. The idea of shifting a destroyer into another dimension is not supported by any known theory or experiment. Still, the allure of alternate dimensions remains strong. It offers an explanation for the bizarre effect described in the legend, the disorientation, the time slips, the vanishing crew. If the ship entered a different realm, even briefly, it might explain the psychological and physical trauma reported by Allen. Another theory suggests that the experiment was part of a broader attempt to weaponize space-time, to create a system of instantaneous transport for military assets. This idea is often linked to the concept of wormholes, hypothetical tunnels through space-time that could connect distant points. Dr. Lydia Romero, astrophysicist. Wormholes are fascinating, but purely theoretical. They require exotic matter with negative energy density, something we've never observed. Even if they exist, stabilizing one would be incredibly difficult. The notion that the Navy created a wormhole in 1943 is not just unlikely, it's impossible. Despite these rebuttals, the theories persist. They are fueled by a mix of scientific jargon, speculative fiction, and a deep mistrust of official narratives. And they are not unique to the Philadelphia experiment. Throughout history, governments have been accused of conducting secret experiments that defy ethical and scientific norms. From Nazi human trials to Cold War psychological tests, the record is not clean. These real events lend credibility to the idea that something strange could happen in Philadelphia, even if the details are distorted. One historical parallel often cited is the Manhattan Project, the secret U.S. program to develop nuclear weapons. Thousands of scientists worked in isolation, under strict secrecy, to create a technology that would change the world. The project was hidden from the public for years, and even many participants didn't know the full scope of what they were building. The Manhattan Project proves that large-scale, secret scientific efforts are possible. It also shows how dangerous such efforts can be when driven by wartime urgency and unchecked ambition. Could the Philadelphia experiment have been a similar project? One that failed, was buried, and later resurfaced through whispers and speculation? Among the most provocative claims tied to the Philadelphia experiment is the idea that the USS Eldridge didn't just vanish. It traveled through time. This concept, while fantastical, has become a central theme in many retellings of the story. But what does science actually say about time travel? To explore this, we must first understand the theoretical foundations. Einstein's relativity and time dilation. Albert Einstein's theory of relativity introduced the idea that time is not absolute. According to special relativity, time slows down for objects moving at speeds close to the speed of light, a phenomenon known as time dilation. This effect has been confirmed experimentally. Atomic clocks flown on high-speed aircraft tick slightly slower than those on the ground. But this is not time travel in the cinematic sense. It's a subtle shift, not a leap into the past or future. Dr. Helen Strauss, relativity physicist. Time dilation is real, but it's not dramatic. You need to travel at near light speed for years to notice significant differences. The idea that a ship could jump decades forward or backward in time using electromagnetic fields is not supported by relativity, general relativity, and wormholes. Einstein's general theory of relativity allows for the possibility of wormholes, hypothetical tunnels through space-time that could connect distant points. If traversable, a wormhole could theoretically allow for time travel. But wormholes are purely theoretical. They require exotic matter with negative energy density to remain stable, something that has never been observed. Dr. Miguel Alvarez, astrophysicist. Wormholes are fascinating but speculative. Even if they exist, creating or controlling one would be far beyond our current capabilities. The idea that the Navy opened a wormhole in 1943 is imaginative, but not scientifically credible. Closed time like curves and paradoxes. Some solutions to Einstein's equation suggest the existence of closed time like curves, paths through space-time that loop back on themselves. These could, in theory, allow an object to return to its own past. But such models often lead to paradoxes. The most famous is a grandfather paradox. What happens if you travel back in time and prevent your own existence? Physicists debate whether the universe would allow such contradictions. Some propose the Novikov self-consistency principle, which states that events in a time loop must be consistent, meaning you can't change the past, only fulfill it. These ideas are intellectually stimulating, but they remain untested. No experiment has ever demonstrated time travel, and no technology exists to manipulate space-time in this way. Quantum mechanics and multiverse theory. Quantum mechanics introduces another possibility, the multiverse. According to some interpretations, every decision creates a branching universe. In this view, time travel might not mean revisiting your own past, but entering a parallel timeline. This theory is popular in science fiction, but it's not universally accepted in physics. It's also unclear how one would access or navigate these alternate realities. Dr. Aisha Grant, quantum theorist. The multiverse is a fascinating idea, but it's not proven. It's a way to explain quantum behavior, not a roadmap for time travel. The notion that the Eldridge jumped into another timeline is speculative at best. Time travel in popular culture. Despite scientific skepticism, time travel remains a powerful narrative device. From H.G. Wells' A Time Machine to Back to the Future, it captures our imagination like few other concepts. The Philadelphia experiment taps into this fascination. It suggests that time is not fixed, that with the right technology, we could escape its bounds. In the 1984 film adaptation, the USS Eldridge is transported from 1943 to the 1980s, creating a dramatic clash of eras. This version of the story, while fictional, reflects our desire to rewrite history, revisit lost moments, and glimpse the future. Why time travel resonates. Time travel appeals to our deepest emotions. Regret, the wish to undo mistakes. Curiosity, the desire to see what lies ahead. Nostalgia, the longing for a simpler past. It also challenges our understanding of causality, identity, and free will. If time could be altered, what does that mean for responsibility? For destiny? The Philadelphia experiment, by invoking time travel, becomes more than a military myth. It becomes a philosophical inquiry, a story about what it means to be human in a universe governed by time. As we reach the end of our journey into the mystery of the Philadelphia experiment, we step beyond the boundaries of science and history into the realm of philosophy. Because at its core, this story is not just about a ship or an experiment or conspiracy. It's about the human condition, about our relationship with knowledge, with power, and with the unknown, the ethics of discovery. Throughout history, humanity has pursued knowledge with relentless ambition. From fire to flight, from steam engines to space travel, we have pushed the limits of what is possible. But with each breakthrough comes a question. Should we do something just because we can? The Philadelphia experiment, whether real or imagined, forces us to confront this dilemma. If we could bend space-time, if we could manipulate reality, what would we do with that power? Will we use it wisely? Or would we, as the legend suggests, unleash forces we cannot control? Dr. Evelyn Hart, philosopher of science. Science is a tool. It's neutral, but how we use it reflects our values. The Philadelphia experiment myth is a cautionary tale, a reminder that knowledge without wisdom can be dangerous. The nature of truth. Another philosophical question raised by the legend is, what is truth? In a world filled with conflicting narratives, how do we know what's real? The Philadelphia experiment has no hard evidence, yet it persists. People believe it, debate it, and pass it on. Does that make it true? Philosophers distinguish between empirical truth, what can be measured and verified, and narrative truth, what resonates emotionally and culturally. The Philadelphia experiment may fail the first test, but it passes a second. It speaks to something deeper, a sense that reality is not fixed, that secrets exist, and that the official story is not always a whole story. The limits of human perception. We experience the world through our senses, our memories, and our interpretations. But these are flawed. We misremember. We misinterpret. We see patterns where none exist. The Philadelphia experiment challenges our perception of reality. It asks, what if everything we know is just a sliver of what's possible? What if time, space, and matter are more fluid than we think? Dr. Omar Velez, cognitive scientist. Our brains are wired to simplify. We create models of reality to help us survive, but they're not complete. Stories like the Philadelphia experiment stretch those models. They invite us to imagine a reality that's bigger, stranger, and more complex. The power of myth. In the end, the Philadelphia experiment is a myth, not in the sense of being false, but in the sense of being meaningful. Myths are stories we tell to make sense of the world. They reflect our fears, our hopes, and our values. This myth warns us about the dangers of unchecked science. It questions the honesty of institutions. It explores the boundaries of time and space. And it reminds us that the unknown is always just beyond reach. Whether the experiment happened or not is almost beside the point. What matters is what the story reveals about us. Closing, we began with a ship, a whisper, a legend. We explored the science, the skepticism, the psychology, and the philosophy. We spoke to experts, examined the evidence, and followed the threads of history and imagination. And now, we return to the question that started it all. Did the Philadelphia experiment really happen? The answer may never be known, but the story endures because it speaks to something timeless. It speaks to our desire to understand the universe, to master the unknown, to believe that there is more to reality than meets the eye. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. Whether you walk away convinced, skeptical, or simply curious, we hope this exploration has sparked your imagination and reminded you that the greatest mysteries are not always found in the stars or in the depths of the ocean, but in the stories we tell and the questions we dare to ask. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop wondering what lies just beyond the veil. And be sure to comment what your thoughts are on this mystery. Do you believe? Tell us why. Do you disbelieve? Also tell us why you think this is impossible. The truth is not always buried in classified files or locked behind steel doors. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, disguised as myth, waiting for someone to ask the right question. But what if the Philadelphia experiment was only the beginning? In our next chapter, we'll follow the threads that lead from Philadelphia to Montauk, uncovering claims of time portals, psychic warfare, and experiments that stretch the limits of human consciousness. Join us as we explore the alleged continuation of the experiment, the Montauk Project. Coming soon, right here on Scape News, where we discover the past, present, and welcome to the Inner Circle. This isn't just a membership, it's a mission. You're supporting forensic truth, mythic blends, and ceremonial broadcasts that honor every moment. Members unlock exclusive enhancements, behind-the-scenes alerts, and direct access to the pulse of Scape News and leading sponsor, Gold Rush Fever Specialty Coffee. Join us and help shape the signal. We thank you, and as always, stay safe.